WTIM, your information station. Leroy Clamola here with you this morning, and we'll be joining Grayson here in just a little bit. But right now, we'll get things kicked off here this morning with our morning show, our sponsors on our live stream, including People's Bank and Trust, where we put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville. You always do better at Landmark. Joining me right now over the phone is our guest, State Senator Steve McClure. And Senator McClure, glad to have you on the show.
Oh, great to be with you.
So we're going to get things kicked off here. You guys have had a busy couple of weeks over in Springfield. I know the Governor Pritzker just signing the budget. I believe earlier this week he signed the budget. Your thoughts on that? And I know there's been some contentious parts of this budget.
Yes, no. So it's the biggest budget in the state's history this year, $2 billion bigger than last year. And last year's budget was the biggest budget in the state's history. The year before that was the biggest budget in the state's history. So the governor doesn't seem to know how to cut spending at all, and he wants to just increase taxes everywhere that he can. And some of these taxes are hard to find. Stuff on gaming and on businesses. And so the tax increases were about $800 million in this budget. And what happens is, as we all know, is if you tax a business, well, the business has to pass that tax on to the consumer to make sure that they can still make a profit and pay their bills, et cetera. So the governor is very good at putting out hidden taxes. And so that's kind of one of the major things that happened. Another major thing that happened in the last day of session was that the Senate Democrats passed a bill to put a $1.50 tax on deliveries. So if you have a DoorDash come to your house, or if you have a Amazon delivery come to your house. And so, that was a bizarre thing to do at the very end of session. And that wasn't to pay for anything in the budget. That was to pay for the mess that we have in the Chicago Transit Authority. Because, Mayor Johnson in Chicago doesn't know how to handle his finances. And there have been a lot of people that have stopped riding the trains in Chicago because of the crime and because they're just not clean. Yeah. But instead of saying, okay, well, the people that do ride the trains, maybe you should increase their fees, they kept the fees the same and decided that everybody that gets an Amazon delivery or a DoorDash or whatever should have to pay an additional tax to pay for Chicago's mess. And so while that did pass the Senate and that got a lot of news on social media, so a lot of people are aware of it, it did not pass the House, at least not yet. So I would credit Republicans for really shining a light on that tax and making it so that in the House the Democrats didn't want to vote for it. But that just goes to show you the lengths in which some of the Democrats in the state are going to go after everybody's money. And at what point do they say, let's rein in spending a bit. Let's see if Chicago can't make some reforms to clean up their mess instead of just constantly raising taxes on. And every year there's a new tax on something that is kind of, like I said, hidden. And so, I'm just trying to get the Democrats to realize that working families in the state can't pay these taxes anymore, and it's driving people out of the state. And we should look at maybe some reforms and maybe cutting spending.
It really makes you scratch your head as far as, reasoning behind a lot of this. And we know the reasoning behind at least of what their logic is, but it does make you scratch your head, especially downstate where you're, 3.5 hours away from Chicago.
Right. Why are you going to have, let's just say a senior citizen who orders groceries that include prescription drugs that come to their house? Why are you going to charge them $1.50 to pay for, salaries for Chicago Transit Authority people and that sort of thing? It's really, I just see a lack of empathy is what it is from some lawmakers, where they're not looking at what people have to pay and what they're going through, and they don't care. They're just saying, well, we've got this huge mess in Chicago. And I got news for the people, the legislators that were behind this. You could give Chicago $1 billion, but it's still not going to be enough. Like, no matter how much, one thing I've learned is no matter how much you give them, it's never enough, because they're not good with their finances. And they're not passing reforms to change the process to make it so that we can live within our means. The same is true with the budget. This year you're $2 billion more than last year. You can give them $3 billion this year, and they'll find a way to say they need $4. It's never enough. It's just when it's other people's money, they just don't seem to care, and it's like monopoly money. And you've got a governor who really has lived his life with nothing but monopoly money, and he doesn't really understand how the real world works or operates. This is what you get, the highest budget every year, and it's got to stop. It's insane.
I know there were some cuts that were made. Anything that you saw supportive of especially maybe farmers and agriculture or programs that are not Chicago-wise that are down here?
Well, there were some changes to some of the farming. I think there was a bill involving whether or not you've got to take a test every year as it relates to, I think, pesticides and things like that. I think that's been changed a little bit. The Farm Bureau supported that bill. There's also a bill involving more just compensation for people if their land is used for a pipeline or something like that. And that was also something the Farm Bureau really was involved with trying to get passed. So there have been some things that were putting us in a more positive direction. But, you take those things and then you add the fact that, the lawmakers that voted for the budget voted for a big pay increase for lawmakers. Again, when it's like, well, we got to raise taxes because we can't pay our bills. Well, it's like, well, then why are you adding things that don't need to be added, like a massive tax increase to pay for lawmaker salary increases? I mean, this stuff is just unbelievable. And I wish that, honestly, your show is really important today because these are issues that most people are not aware of because we're so inundated with news from the federal government that people don't have time to figure out what's happening locally. And so, that's why these politicians feel like they can slip in things like pay raises because people don't talk about them as much.
Yeah, and I would almost argue that while the federal level is super important, what's happening at your city, local, and state levels are probably even more important.
Oh, absolutely. It affects all of us more what happens at the state and local level than the national stuff does. And the national stuff is the most interesting, certainly, and it gets us all the most riled up, and we all have our sides on issues and things. But the local level, $800 million in new taxes that are hidden, you're going to pay for it, and you're not going to. It's going to be done in a way that's sneaky, and so you don't realize you're paying for it. And so I can scream all I want to about this, but the fact is, we'll come back next year for another budget. It'll probably be another record budget, and the fact that they get away with these hidden taxes this year makes me think they're going to want to get away with them next year as well. And it just adds up and adds up. And, you go to different places and you spend money with this high inflation, your money doesn't get you as far, but that's particularly true in the state of Illinois because of all these I shouldn't say secret, they're not secret, but they're hidden taxes on businesses, which of course those taxes are passed on to the consumer.
Yeah, and definitely stuff that people need to research and investigate as far as what's going on with their taxes and with where their money is being spent. I was thinking about you earlier this week. I have a lot of family that's up in Minnesota, and obviously I know you probably heard about the news that's going on up there with the hit list that came out security wise. It made me a little bit uncomfortable. I'm sure, obviously, it made you a little bit uncomfortable too. Your thoughts on what happened with that situation up north?
Well, it's horrible. Obviously, my thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. I would just say that, we've got a Second Amendment for a reason, and I would suggest anybody that's an elected official should protect themselves within their home. I mean, you've got this guy, this photo I saw of this guy wearing his mask like a psychopath, and they opened the door after he banged and said he was police or whatever. I mean, the whole thing was extremely creepy. There's no question about it. I first experienced my public service as a prosecutor. I was a prosecutor for 6 years, so I was threatened a couple of times in that position. So this is not something that's new to me, and we've certainly. Through the years, I mean, this is my 6 years as state senator. I've gotten, there was one there were letters that were sent to the members of the General Assembly, myself included, that were threatening. And we've certainly had, we had somebody call my office, I think last year, and say they were going to come in and take a baseball bat to my assistant's head and stuff like that. So that's kind of just where we're at right now. And it's not just Republicans. Obviously, it's Republicans and Democrats and independents that get these threats. But the fact is that all of us need to just make sure that we're properly protected at home, and we take safeguards, put safeguards in place to ensure that we're safe. And it's something I don't worry about at all. And I've been dealing with it, like I said, since I was a prosecutor. So I certainly appreciate your concern, but I'm taking steps to take care of myself, and I certainly hope that everybody's doing the same thing that's an elected official. And if you're not an elected official, if you're in a position where people are threatening you, as I said, when I was a prosecutor or law enforcement, I just hope everybody takes whatever steps they can within their power to protect themselves.
State Senator Steve McClure joining us here this morning. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to him about some stuff that happened yesterday in Springfield. You're listening to WTIM, your information station. Back in just a moment.
Your information station, WTIM. Radio gets results.
Miller Media Group Advertising works for Taylorville Estates. Here's Administrator Tony Clark.
In the past year, we have doubled our census. So that's been impacted mainly by the radio advertising. That is where we do the majority of our advertising. And our census definitely shows that it works. They lead us in the right direction for the season changing, and they anticipate our upcoming needs before we even have to tell them what they are. We've had consistent growth over the past 12 months. Like I said, we've doubled in our census, and that's been the first time in 43 months since prior to COVID that we've gotten to where now we have a waiting list for people to come. So advertising on the radio really does have an impact.
Coming to the Christian County Ag Fair in Taylorville Friday, July 18th at 7 p.m., it's country superstar Clay Walker. Clay Walker, Friday, July 18th at 7 p.m. at the Christian County Ag Fair. Opening for Walker is Casey Donahue with 21 #1 singles and selling out venues nationwide. Get your tickets now for Clay Walker and Casey Donahue at ChristianCountyFair.com. That's ChristianCountyFair.com.
Hi, I'm Brenda Elder, Executive Director of the Shelby County Economic Development Corporation. If you're looking to grow your business, we're here to help. From supporting our local businesses to attracting new investment, everything we do is focused on building a brighter future for Shelby County. We sponsor job fairs to connect local talent with great employers and inspire entrepreneurs through the Shelby County CEO program. Click on our icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com. Shelby County Economic Development, growing business, growing community.
June is Men's Health Month, a time to focus on preventive care. Regular checkups can detect issues like heart disease, cancer, and diabetes early, improving outcomes. Don't wait for symptoms. Schedule your annual wellness visit today. Early action can save your life or the life of someone you love. It only takes one appointment to start taking control of your health.
This Men's Health Month message comes from Taylorville Memorial Hospital, building stronger communities through better health.
CNB Bank and Trust has been helping open doors for Central Illinois farmers since 1854. Find out why they're among Illinois' top ag lenders by clicking their icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com. Member FDIC.
Hi, I'm Bob Reddings of the Bob Reddings family of dealerships. See our huge inventory of about 2,000 vehicles by clicking on our ad at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
Your information station, WTIM.
Welcome back to WTIM, your information station. Leroy Clamola here with you. Joining us here this morning is State Senator Steve McClure. talk to us a little bit about some of the stuff that's going on in Springfield and at the Capitol as the budget was approved earlier this week, and keeping Senator McClure really, really busy. But he made a stop yesterday over Bank of Springfield as there was a press conference, and Senator McClure, a big deal going on here in Taylorville with this lawsuit that's being filed. This breaking news lawsuit that's being filed. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I went to the press conference not as a state senator or not as an attorney, but more as a private citizen to support the Peden family. Ashley and Chad Peden certainly have been heavily involved in trying to make our state a better place and to ensure that kids at school are safe. And I filed a bill this year with Ashley and Chad. We filed a bill to make it so that if a student commits a sexual assault or attempts to commit a sexual assault, they're expelled, whether that's at the school or on the school bus or at a school-sponsored event, etc. And we got more sponsors from both Republicans and Democrats than any other piece of legislation this entire session. So unfortunately, that didn't move this year. We're going to be back at next year and file a few changes, but file basically the same bill. And so Ashley and Chad have been with me the entire time. And so their main goal has always been to make sure that what happened to their daughter at school, where she was sexually assaulted, never happens again. She was attacked on the school bus and then at a bus stop, and we've got to ensure to protect our kids because they're just there's bad stuff happening in the world, and there's bad stuff in some cases happening at school, and a lot of people aren't aware of it. Ever since I filed that legislation, we've gotten calls from all over the state where someone says the same thing happened at our school, where the school had some maybe didn't protect the students and then didn't suspend or expel the perpetrator after the initial incident happened. So I wanted to show up yesterday morning at the press conference just to show my support for the family. I've got no involvement in the lawsuit, and as I said, I was there as a private citizen. But their goal is to make sure that this never happens to anybody else, and they're fighting not just in the courtroom, but also obviously at the Capitol, trying to change things. And so I really appreciate their willingness to go out there in the community to try to make things different, make changes, and I'm supportive of them, and I just really feel that it's important to protect our kids at school.
And I'm sure they appreciate your support as a private citizen. Legislatively wise, it feels like, and you mentioned a little bit yesterday as well, there is a lot of support from other lawmakers for getting this legislation passed.
There is. Really, I don't want to have to go through the whole process explanation here because I think a lot of your listeners would get bored by it if I started talking about it. But long story short, while the bill is still in assignments, that's the committee that every bill has to start in before it has to be moved by Democratic leadership to a committee where it can actually get a vote. My bill just stayed in assignments, and while it's in assignments, I can't file any changes to it. That's just the rule in the Senate. And so, while there may have been tweaks needed for the bill, which there were, I could never get those filed. And so the tweaks are now in an amendment that was already ready to be filed this year, but we're going to file it as a new bill next year. So my hope is that these tweaks will make it so that it's a bill that I can use to get passed. But it's a tough climb. And I've had bills that are very prominent that everybody supposedly supports publicly that were really, really hard to get passed, but I've gotten them passed anyway. And one of the bills that was in that category was my bill to make sure that DCFS investigators can carry pepper spray with them when they go to homes. That was really, really tough to pass, but everybody was supposedly supportive of it publicly, but we got it done. I'm hoping we can do the same thing for this bill next year.
Good deal. All right, Senator McClure, thanks so much. Appreciate your time this morning. We're out of time, but look forward to talking to you soon about some of the many things that are going on in Springfield. Appreciate your time.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot.
All right, Senator McClure joining us here this morning on WTIM.
The Big 870 WTIM Assumption Taylorville.
96.1 FM Taylorville.
107.5 FM Shelbyville. 107.9 FM Pena Nokomis.
This hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. What to do about Iran? That's a question facing President Trump. He's been meeting in recent days with his national security team. And from what we can tell,